Hey, I'm Cole Gertis, and today we're going to teach you everything you need to know about videography, or maybe just enough to be dangerous. I am joined by Micah Miller.
Here I am.
He's very impressive. I know what all of you are thinking. I know what everyone's thinking. What's he going to teach us? He's so young. He's so young. But you've had such an extensive experience. I feel very privileged that we get to talk about this because you've shot weddings, you've shot brand videos, you've shot skate videos, you've shot like entertainment video. Like you've shot so much and such a variety. And so I'm really excited to get to chat about kind of where to start and how to kickstart videography with you.
Yeah.
And I say one of the reasons I'm excited just to talk in general about videography is we all as like a society basically have the best camera that's ever existed in the entire world in our pocket now.
Yeah.
And it's no longer a barrier to entry for technology.
Yeah,
It's no longer, I can't afford the newest lens or the editing software or anything like that. It's super accessible now.
Yeah. I think it definitely depends on like what your goals are. Like if you just want to film like a family trip, I wouldn't say go out and buy like a $2,000 camera because you can film an amazing video on your phone. But like if you're showing up to shoot like a wedding, you know what I mean? And you get hired for $5,000 and then you show up with an iPhone. It's like, yeah, that video you're going to make might be better than the person that shows up with a $10,000 built out Red, but it's still like kind of, you want to show a level of professionalism, and people like to see those big cameras too, or at least like, that's one thing I noticed, like even with like the little Canon R5, when I show up to like, I shot a video for the studio the other day and I showed up with that and they were like, why didn't you bring like the Blackmagic? That's got like, it's like a big camera, big battery pack at the bottom, and it's got the monitor up top and the batteries all over it and it's fully built out. And I'm like, well, this camera honestly is way more suitable for like the video that I'm shooting here for you today. You know what I mean?
Appearance is sometimes important.
To the people that don't know cameras, yeah. And so sometimes they'll see like this really big, like built out like camera, and they're like, oh yes, that's the camera that I want. But when I'm shooting like an interior video and I prefer to have a certain look to it, and also especially like this studio, it's super low light, and the Blackmagic is more of like a studio camera. So
okay, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, so just kind of taking it back with like low light specifically.
Yeah.
Because that's something that is hard to define, I think.
Yeah.
Like what level defines low light? And also just how do you counteract that? Like what is it in a camera or something like that would make it better or worse?
Yeah. Well, one thing is Sony cameras are kind of known for doing well in lower light. They have a lower megapixel. So this camera is 45 megapixel.
The R5?
Yeah, the R5. Like my main run and gun shoot like camera. My Blackmagic, the two cameras I have, the R5 and the Blackmagic, if I was going to be shooting something in lower light, the R5 just like outperforms it. You know what I mean? So at a wedding, I would generally shoot most of it on the Blackmagic, but then when we get to the reception and I need to get like, and it's super dark and there's just like whatever, it all depends on how it looks, but generally I would switch to the R5.
So starting out, you know, like let's just say that you have a phone. And there's so many tools that you can use to up the light, you know, whether it's one of the ring lights or something that you can just kind of hold or place behind whatever it is that you're shooting and stuff. I would say that there's a point where I have shot on my phone and I go, this just looks like trash.
Yeah.
Is that something that you'd say, like if you're first starting out, kind of focus on certain light and times? Because for me, I think I almost have a harder time in direct light, like middle of the day, super bright. I think that's sometimes
like
hard.
harsh lighting.
Yeah, that's almost even harder to shoot, in my opinion, than nighttime. Because at least nighttime, you kind of know the lighting. You can see it.
And you can kind of manipulate it. Yeah. It's like versus like being hot, like you can't, like you can only take off a certain amount of clothes versus being cold and you can just layer up, you know? Yeah, no, I get that. One thing about shooting in the daytime is you can use ND filters, and it basically just pulls down that like super harsh light. But I'll try not to shoot, like especially when we go out and we do like on the wedding shoots, we'll generally try and shoot like either earlier in the morning or later in the day. Because when it's like noon, the sun is at the very top, and it really casts down this harsh light, and it gives you this like raccoon mask almost, where it's like you have these like two shadows here, and underneath like here there's like a shadow, and and then here there'll be like a shadow, and like especially when people wear hats, it's almost impossible. I just shot a video for Zila Fitness, and it was at like noon, and everyone was wearing these like hats, whether it was Zila Fitness or whatever hats, and it was like, when you properly light your subjects, it's like the background, in order to get their face to be lit up, the background would just be completely blown out.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
That was quite.
You kind of have to make a choice.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of struggle, but I feel like iPhones, honestly, they will kind of adapt to their environment and what you're shooting in, and kind of get the lighting right. Most of the time, you might want to tweak it a little bit in post just to make it look a little better. But color grading iPhone footage is generally just like a big pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there something that you can set up, to kind of set yourself up for success if you don't know how to fix it on the backside, or if you're just trying to get something, and let's say it is either daytime or nighttime.
Yeah.
Like, what's the setting that you sort of go to that's the easiest to manipulate? Because there's a few settings on cameras, you know, between the ISO or the f-stop and things like that.
So we're switching away from iPhones with this.
Well, I mean, even with the iPhones, you know, the apps on there are so good now.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I'm using the Blackmagic app.
Yeah.
Not the camera, but using the app on the phone. And so you can manipulate all that stuff now, even on your iPhone. But it's kind of daunting if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's true.
You kind of just like scroll through and you're like, I don't know, that looks good, but I don't know if I hit the settings right.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so on the camera side, it all kind of depends on what you're shooting, and what kind of look you're going for. But what's most pleasing to the eye is 23.97 frames per second, or like 24 frames per second.
Okay.
So I think that's what you see day to day, like what you see through your eyes is like about 24 frames per second.
Okay.
So sometimes when you shoot something in like 60 frames per second, it'll be a little bit like, it just looks a little too like smooth when you see it. You know what I mean? I prefer 24 frames per second. I think most like YouTubers and vloggers will go for 24 frames per second, but it definitely matters on like the kind of look you're going for. Also, like if I'm going to shoot a wedding, I'm always shooting in 60 frames per second, because you can always lower it down in the software, but you can't like tone it back up. And when you shoot 60 frames per second, you have the option to slow things down. Okay. So especially for like a run and gun type situation, because weddings are kind of, I feel like, more run and gun.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you would definitely want to shoot in 60 frames per second. At least that's my personal preference, because then if you kind of almost miss something, but you want that drawn out longer in the edit. For instance, like let's say that they feed each other the cake and then they go in for a kiss. And you were filming the mom crying while they were doing the cake thing, and then you pan over and then they're already like this close to going for the kiss, and you didn't get that shot of them like coming in for the kiss. Yeah. It's like you can slow it down and kind of draw out that kiss longer to kind of
seems like you got the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to, so that it kind of saves you in some situations. However, going back to the low light, frame rate does matter in the low light too, because you basically want to have your shutter speed double what your frame rate is.
Okay, so shutter speed, double what your frame rate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're shooting 24 frames per second, you want to have like 1/60.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Is that a precise, or can it be basically anything over that? So
it can be. It can be
80
over.
Is fine.
It can be over, but it does change the movement. And sometimes if you shoot, like for instance, if you're shooting in broad daylight, let's say like noon, and you have your settings 24 frames per second and 24 frames per second. Let's say your f-stop is 4.0 and your ISO is 100, because that's like the lowest you can go because it's so bright. You really would want to crank your f-stop over your shutter speed, and it kind of depends, but I generally would crank my f-stop over shutter speed, because sometimes it gives this weird, like, it's hard to explain, but this weird motion to things, you know what I mean? It's like when you see a car tire spinning If you shoot that in like 1/60, it'll kind of give like a natural look on how you would see it.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes when you shoot it like 1/2000, it like you can see like the tire spinning. It's like in focus. And it doesn't give that blurry effect. And it's like
Okay.
that's not how you would see it. You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting.
So it all kind of depends. And yeah, I would generally crank my f-stop over
Okay.
that. So, but the thing is when I was shooting the studio videos, I shot some things in 60 because I wanted to slow it down for when I was like panning in for like a shot of like the studio, because
Yep.
there's like studio A, B, and C, and I wanted like some cool like speed ramping things shots where I was like going in and then it like kind of goes fast and then slow. So for that I shot 60, but for the most of it, like getting details, I shot it in 24 because when you have your shutter speed at 1/60, the image is a little bit brighter. You know what I mean? And then you don't have to crank your ISO up so high, because the higher your ISO goes, the more noisy your picture is.
Can you describe noise? Like, what do you mean by noise?
Noise is,
Like
for instance,
like the pixelation. And
yeah,
like
the pixelation. Yeah, when you crank your ISO up to anything over like 800 to 1,000,
Yeah.
the image just starts to get lower and lower in quality. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
So lower quality on that front, but it allows you to keep your f-stop lower and not mess with your frame rate, essentially. So that would be why you would increase
the ISO, yes.
Okay.
But in a lot of times when I'm shooting like a super dark environment, I have my f-stop as low as possible just to make sure that I can kind of keep to that like 800 to 1250 ISO. If I wanted to film this mug and I also wanted a shot of the background, I couldn't shoot in 1.8 because this is going to be in focus, but the background is going to be completely blurry.
Yes.
Right? And in most case scenario, I wouldn't really care. I just want the mug. That's the subject of the frame. But there are certain times where, for instance, like if I want to get like the mom watching her daughter say her vows, I wouldn't want to shoot in 1.8 because I'm just going to get like the back of her head in focus and it's going to be super blurry in the back.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd want to shoot at like 4.0 or even like 7.1 so I can get both things. But then again, it's like, okay, well, what do I want? Because I could shoot in 2.8 and get the back of her head with her watching, and then change my focus point to the bride giving her vows. And then that's kind of a more like cinematic type like shot where it goes from like, this is the subject, and then it changes to here, but it's still the same frame.
So that f-stop is all about the focal point. So, and how deep it goes.
Yeah.
So when you're extending that out, you get a broader depth, basically. So if you're shooting at a very low f-stop, you're gonna have a low point of focal point, and then the higher that you go on that, you'll have a broader depth, essentially.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that you just mentioned with the slowing down the frame rate is for a lot of stuff, unless you're getting a very specific video that you want the sound on and that memory and all that stuff, like family videos, weddings, stuff like that, is stuff that for the most part looks really good slowed down, and you can kind of chop it together. And so upping that frame rate is such a good tip for that, because if you're sitting at the 24 frames per second and you try and slow it down, then it's going to look bad.
Yeah.
But knowing that, like, okay, great, the kids are running in the yard.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to get a great video of this. But if I cut it together amongst like 10 other videos and I go, this was what our summer was, this was everything that we did.
Yeah.
By being able to go up to 60 frames per second and then kind of slow that down a little bit on the backside is such a good tip and such a good way to be able to shoot stuff that you just know this isn't like the video. I'm never going to watch like this one individually.
That's the thing too, is like you could shoot the most amazing video. Like I could shoot the best wedding video of my entire life, or whatever video of my entire life. But if I give it to someone who is not a great editor, it's like pretty much the whole thing is toast. So what you want to do is you want to shoot to edit, right? So a lot of times before I shoot a wedding video, I'll go through Artlist, or not to plug that, we're not sponsored yet. But I'll go through and I'll find a song that I like and that I want to use for the video, and once it's approved, I'll actually download it on my phone, and then like when I go to the wedding and I like go to the bathroom or something,
yeah.
I'll listen to it and close my eyes and try and get that like inspiration of like what I've seen and how it can go, and then I can kind of like obviously like with weddings you have to cover everything, so there's only a certain like amount of creative freedom you get at weddings. But it's like it's just good to know like as you're shooting a video you can kind of think about, okay, how is this edit going to come together, what do I need, right?
That's kind of, oh man, you just gave me just like this biggest idea of how to just shoot really good videos and stuff. And basically like Instagram does this for you. They templatize. And somebody already did the hard work. They already cut these seconds down together to be like, cool, I hit all these moments.
I'm on beat.
But if you're trying to plan for it, if you're like trying to get ahead of it, just listening to the song that you have in mind for whatever this could be, or like, hey, this is the song of the summer. I'm going to be shooting this and I'll probably edit it to this song. And just kind of knowing like, oh, okay, this is like 2 seconds long. This is like 4 seconds long. This is about what I should have in each of these seconds. It's such a good way to think about whatever it is that you're shooting. I never would have thought of like pre-planning for the Instagram edit. You take a videographer that's shooting a movie. They've got a shot list. They've got the scenes. They've got the line. They've got who they're going to. They've got storyboards. They've got all this stuff. And then you watch, I mean, half of the movies and you're like, it's still not great. And that was with all this planning and all of this stuff. And they still didn't get a certain shot, or like the storyline was out. And so it's almost kind of ridiculous to think that as an amateur or even a professional, like going and shooting something, that you'd be able to like walk in and be like, don't worry, I got it. I'll figure it out later.
That's how I personally am, but maybe other people don't feel like that. I'm kidding.
The people who are doing it very well on even Instagram or TikTok or something like that are planning those things out. They're not going and guessing or trying to hope that they got something in their camera reel to like cut together into something.
Exactly. And you can tell when like people do that. The camera is just kind of an extension of like how I see the event. So I think like if I'm going and I'm shooting this pool party, it's like what is there for me to enjoy here and how am I seeing the event? You know what I mean? But it's like when I see a pool party and there's people, I see someone cheers, you know, it's like I want to capture that. And how do I see the event? And that's how I try and capture it. You also kind of have to like keep their vibe to it too. You know what I mean? So a lot of the times when someone's like, hey, can you come shoot a video for me? I'll just like stalk their Instagram page and see like what kind of vibe do they have? Is it high octane? Is it vibey or whatever? And that's just how I kind of go about shooting videos.
What I have found in most videos that I either like or that seem to perform very well is the movement of all of it. And you said cheersing. When you're sitting at a bar or something like that, there's not a lot of movement. It's very kind of stagnant.
Well, I'm 20, so I've never been.
It's in my experience, nightclub, you're up dancing, but you'll get there. You'll experience it. But in a bar, it's a lot of sitting and stuff. And the movement of that, of like a cheers, or you brought up like even a kiss. Like it doesn't have to be a big movement. But just impactful movements are really what will drive the scene essentially. And if you watch movies and stuff, like the sad scenes are very slow. There's not a lot of movement to it. And like the happy scenes, there's more movement, and then the action scenes, there's more scene, And so kind of bringing that into your own videography is very interesting, and just knowing what story you want to tell. Like, was this an action-packed summer, or was it kind of a sad summer, like maybe your pet passed or something like that, and you're wanting to tell that story, that's a drastically different scene.
I think music is also a big part of it. It's so like, if you have a sad scene, choosing like a slower song, and that is kind of more like relaxed almost, or like if it makes you feel sad, like that's one thing, that's one big thing is like when I'm choosing music, it's like, how does this song make me feel? And if I'm making a video where I'm going out and like skating with my friends, like I feel, I guess you could say like cool, or like I'm trying to do tricks, or I'm trying to like have some energy, and it's like, okay, what song like gives me that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, one thing I do is like, if I'm skating and I have an AirPod in, and it's like, what song that like really like hit, and I felt like I could, what song hit, and I could do any trick to that song as long as I had it playing in my ear.
Yeah.
Even if I've never done it before, I could do the craziest trick. It's like that's the song that I would want to use for like the Instagram reel.
I mean, speaking of skating, how do you edit something like that? Because that is so drastically different as opposed to a wedding. You get one shot. You only get one first dance.
Yeah. What's funny with the skateboarding though, it is kind of the same because as like a wedding, because it's like the bride and groom, when they kiss at the top of the stage, it's like that's only going to happen one time. You know what I mean? And when the skater who's been trying this for like an hour lands that trick, it's not like, oh, you know, I think it'd be better from this side. Can you just do that again? Like, no.
I guess
one
that's
take,
true.
one shot. So if you would generally like focus on getting that shot, and then if you wanted to show their board or the shoes, you could get like one thing I really like is like static shots where like whatever they're skating might be the subject, and then they're like to the side. You know what I mean? As if so like let's say he's skating like the courthouse stage, because I was there yesterday filming a clip for one of my friends just on the phone. But if I wanted to show like him and his like board or shoes or whatever, what I'd probably do is get a shot of like the stage, and it's like the subject is the stage and he's just a little character in it, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes from that and it cuts to like him, like like the whole frame is like his shoes, and you can just see him kind of like messing with his board or whatever, getting ready to like go throw the trick.
Yeah.
And then it's a shot from behind, and he goes to throw his board down, or maybe it's from the front so you can see the graphic on the board, and he throws his board down and rides past the camera, and then it goes into the high movement shot of like me following him with a fisheye lens, and he switch ollies up, switch manuals the pad, and then nollie flips out. You know what I mean? Or,
I don't know what any of those words mean, but it sounded
I guess
great.
that'd be fakey. Flip out, but yeah.
So I love this because we started obviously talking about camera settings and stuff, which is such an important part, and, you know, make it look good type of thing. But once you've got it to look good, that's not enough to put a good video together. That's enough to get one good shot.
Yeah.
You can get a good shot of it, but being able to put stuff together is the story.
Yeah.
And knowing what story you want to tell beforehand, and that's so beautiful. Like, here's the scene.
Yeah.
Here is the setting, and then here's a little insert of the shoes, and then here's what's happening. Here's the movement. Here's everything else kind of playing out.
Yeah.
It's very cinematic, just even the way you described it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing is like back to what I was talking about, like how do I see this place? Like I'm just thinking about like yesterday when I was filming my homie, if I had to shoot like an actual like real video of him doing that, I would have got like the courthouse like sign, because like every skater would probably know that, you know, because that's right at the entrance. I would have gotten that to build like some context of like where it is, and then maybe like a big wide shot of like the entire like spot as a whole, and maybe just a couple like static shots that like cuts to like on the beat. If the beat is duh 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 duh, it goes to like one shot here, one shot there, and duh 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 duh, and it just kind of shows the whole environment, and then it shows like him in it, or how do I see his shoes and his board? It's like I wouldn't just want to like stick a camera there and like show it.
Yeah.
I want to have like a cool way to like cut from one shot to the other, and it all kind of fits and it builds up. It's like a riser building up into him doing the trick. You know what I mean? Instead of like just the shot of him doing the trick, and then it's like he's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just static inserts.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a
exactly.
photo montage at the end.
Speaking of montage, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is I feel like in my earlier days, especially doing like because I started off doing weddings, I basically was just making these like montages of like the day or like what was happening. You know what I mean? And just like, okay, they're cutting the cake, getting a shot of that, and then they're kissing,
You're like, I did it
getting
all.
a shot
I
of
got
this.
it all. What do you want from me?
Yeah. And honestly, it's like you kind of have to shoot it that way anyway. It's like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to capture the cake any differently? Like, besides just getting a better shot, I guess. But when it comes to the edit, it's like making a story with it, piece it together in a different way, and then it fades in, the music comes in, and the vowels immediately start, for instance. And it's like, I can't believe this day is finally happening. It couldn't come soon enough, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. And then through all of those like vows, it's showing them like getting ready and building up. And then like maybe it hits like a super emotional moment where like the bride almost like, or groom kind of tears up, but you can hear it in their voice where their voice gets a little like weak, you know what I mean? And then the groom turns around to see them, and then they have that interaction. If you have a bunch of like 2 second to like 5 second clips, her walking down the aisle could be like a straight like 10, 15 seconds. And that really like draws out like the, that moment, because it was such a big part of the day, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and you know, you're talking about such big moments, like the once in a lifetime, the never going to happen again type of things. One of the things I've always noticed is when I go back and look at videos, or when I see things that are even like TV and film and stuff, some of the most interesting things that draw me in are tiny, tiny details.
Yeah.
So, you know, you walking through the like wedding montage almost reminds me of my wedding montage and stuff, and like our wedding video.
Yeah.
And one of the things I kind of forget about is that we had everybody like write little notes, and there was this really cool luggage bag there that like people put the notes in and stuff.
Okay.
And you know, little details like that were inserts that it probably wouldn't have got shot if you were like, okay, I got to make sure I'm getting this big moment, and I got to follow the bride and groom. But then you see these little things, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was really cool. I forgot about that. And those little details being put in there are almost as important. And like if you're shooting your kids or something like that, like recording their shoes or recording the toys that they had at that time.
Exactly. And I feel like it's hard, like for you, it's your story and you're capturing that, you know what I mean? But as like, and I just keep going back to weddings, it's just easy to pick on, but you really have to think like, what is important to the bride and groom? Like, do they really care about their luggage box with all the little notes in it? And it's like, probably. And you want to get that so they can like remember that for the rest of their lives.
They spent time on the flowers.
You know what I mean?
They spent time on the vases that are there.
And the vases were probably from her great grandmother.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why you want to get a shot of them, because that matters so much to them. After a certain amount of time from like an event, you kind of forget like some of those little details. And so as like a filmer, making sure that you're capturing those little things and getting those little details, it means a lot to them. Like later down in the future, you know what I mean? And that's one thing I love about shooting wedding videos. It's like when I'm in charge of capturing their vows, it's like, dude, it's like their great grandkids are gonna see this video.
That might be the one thing that gets passed down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that might be it.
Yeah, maybe. When you're preparing for a shoot, it's like that is the most important thing, because showing up to a shoot and realizing that like you don't have an SD card is like probably like the worst feeling in the entire world.
I mean, even just setting up something like this, you know, deleting the old stuff, adding it new, making sure I'm in focused. Like it's not the hardest thing to do, but it is a checklist.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, when you have to take something like this somewhere else, it's like if you forget this one chord, you're done. You're screwed. Yeah. And so when I go through like when I like pack for a shoot the night before, I'm like, okay, it's time to shoot the video right now. What is going to get me through the shoot to where I'm not screwed, right? So I'm not going to focus on making sure that I have my top handle first in my bag, whatever.
Yeah.
I always pack as in what is going to screw me over that I'm not going to have tomorrow. And I just, in my head, I just think of this 3D camera, and it's like, okay, I've got that, and it's like, okay, can't shoot with just the body. I have to make sure I have a battery. Okay, and now I have to make sure I have storage. And now that I even have one lens in my bag, now I know that tomorrow when I show up, I'm not effed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I go through and I'm like, okay, if I want a side handle, I'll get that. Or if I want a top handle, if I want the monitor, then I'll get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so dude, making sure that you have a checklist, like even writing one down. Anyway.
In all honesty, I feel like we have a pretty good 1, 2, 3 of like how to get stuff. Is like be prepared, like have your stuff ready, which, you know, probably a pretty good skill for life, just having your stuff.
Definitely.
Knowing your settings and like what you want out of it, like what kind of like setting you're shooting in and stuff like that. And then just knowing the story you want to tell. I feel like those 3 things is success right there. Like if you can capture those 3, you're 90% of the way there. Yeah. You've got it, you know, and obviously there's some tweaking. You got to play with it to get everything right. And you got to figure out like story timing, like story architecture sometimes might play a part in that. But like that stuff you learn, on the job, and like settings, you kind of learn on the job. You kind of like figure it out a little bit, like what you're shooting.
Yeah. That's the other thing is like experience is the whole thing. It's like you could watch 10 hours of YouTube videos on how to shoot videos and whatnot. But once you get to the shoot, and there's just so much that you learn, even in the past year, especially since moving to LA, like I realized how little I knew when I came out here, even though I thought I knew so much more because I had been, shooting all these wedding videos, and I knew how to, get the right composure and and get my settings right and expose right. But then moving out here and having to shoot like social media videos and everything, it's just like it's a completely different ball game. And like being around people, especially out here, that know what they're doing and being able to learn from them, it was a game changer. So yeah, just getting out and like actually doing it, like it's just the biggest thing, because you could watch as many YouTube tutorials as you want, and even though they'll give you amazing information, it's like actually hands-on experience is like the biggest thing.
The 3 things that I took away, and some of it is just in life of just having your stuff prepared and having it packed is huge. But sometimes something that you'd forget, like all skills as you're learning, sometimes you think that it's not important to be really packed up as you're beginning. And then just knowing your tools, knowing what you're using, really learning what each setting is for, how to utilize that, and then how to use that for what your goal is, whether you're telling a sad or a happy story and stuff like that, and really playing around with it, I think is so imperative. But then ultimately, for me, what I kind of took away from this, and I really love, is that videography is about the story. It's about what you're trying to tell. It's about who you're trying to tell it to. Yeah. Are you trying to pass this down to your grandkids, or is this a funny thing for Instagram that you just need to put out for 5 minutes? And figuring that out is a huge part of all of this. And I think if you can really hone in those 3 things, the rest of it kind of comes naturally in succession. Yeah.
Instead of just like making a montage of like an event that like nobody would really care to watch,
Micah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man. Woo! That's a wrap.